A drunk millionaire walked into the wrong room and took the virginity of the maid, thinking she was his wife. She, secretly in love, didn't have the courage to tell the truth that could destroy him. If you love love stories and romance, watch till the end, subscribe to this channel, and comment where you're watching from. Stay tuned. The sound of pneumatic hammers echoed through the streets of Seaport Harbor like a symphony of destruction. Ethan Morgan Cole watched from the window of his office on the 30th floor, his grey eyes fixed on the low-income housing that would be demolished next week. His perfectly manicured hands held a glass of 40-year-old Scotch whiskey, but the amber liquid couldn't warm the ice that had grown in his chest over 4 decades of life. At 41, Ethan dominated the coastal real estate market like a modern emperor. He bought dreams, sold nightmares, transformed homes into numbers on a spreadsheet. The families who lost their houses to his projects were merely temporary obstacles, background noise in his relentless rise to the top of the urban food chain. He had learned early as a boy in the cold corridors of his father's mansion that feelings were luxuries that powerful men couldn't afford. To love was to hand the keys of your own empire to the enemy. His secretary, Victoria, knocked on the smoked glass door before entering. She was a 50-year-old woman, efficient as a machine, who had known him long enough not to expect kindness from him. "Mr. Cole, your wife called. The business dinner has been moved to tomorrow and the layoff list you requested is on your desk." Ethan nodded without turning. Allison, his wife of 15 years, was a classy woman with an economics degree from Stanford, with a smile that cost more than a condo in Newport Beach. She knew exactly which role to play at each social event, knew the names of all the important investors' children, and never questioned the methods he used to build his empire. Their marriage was an unwritten contract, a partnership where he provided status and she provided respectability. Love was never part of the agreement. The sun was beginning to set behind the buildings when Ethan finally left the office. His black BMW glided through the streets like a silent shadow as he thought about the contract he would close the next morning. Another victory, a few more millions, a few more families evicted. The driver dropped him off at the door of the Japanese restaurant where he would celebrate alone, as he always did. Allison had her own commitments, her own secrets, and he didn't care enough to ask. The sake burned his throat, mixing with the whiskey already flowing in his veins. Ethan ate alone, observing other customers through the reflection in the window. Couples laughing together, families sharing plates, people who seemed genuinely happy in each other's company. He wondered, with almost scientific curiosity, what it would be like to feel that lightness, that connection that seemed so natural to others. When he arrived home, the mansion in Bellevue Hills was immersed in an almost oppressive silence. The automatic lights turned on as he passed, revealing corridors of Italian marble and artwork that cost more than entire houses. Allison had traveled to Boston that morning, something about a contemporary art exhibition, but he hadn't paid attention to the details. He rarely paid attention to what she said, just as she rarely cared about what he felt. The alcohol weighed on his steps as he climbed the curved staircase leading to the second floor. His Armani jacket was abandoned on the crystal railing, his Italian tie thrown on the mahogany floor. Ethan pushed open what he thought was his bedroom door, but the alcohol confusion guided him to the guest room. There, under a blanket too thin for the cold from the air conditioning, slept a small, fragile figure. Lily was 19 and looked even younger in the soft light of the bedside lamp. Her brown hair was spread across the cheap pillow, contrasting with the tanned skin that the southern sun had gilded before she migrated to the coast. She wore a simple nightgown, the kind bought at discount stores, but there was a natural dignity in her peaceful sleep that contrasted with all the artificial luxury surrounding Ethan. She had been working in the house for only 3 weeks, part of the outsourced cleaning team that Allison had hired for a charity event. She was the daughter of migrants from Savannah, who came to the coast in search of opportunities and found only jobs that others rejected. Her father, Samuel, cleaned buildings at dawn, and her mother, Sarah, cared for wealthy elderly people, who treated her like furniture. Lily had inherited from them the strength to wake before sunrise and the humility to smile, even when the world seemed to conspire against her. But there was something more about Lily, something that Ethan had noticed. The first time he saw her in the reception area, 3 weeks earlier, she was delivering documents forgotten by an engineer, and when her eyes met his, there was a moment of mutual recognition, as if two lost souls identified each other in the crowd. She had immediately lowered her gaze, intimidated by his presence, but Ethan had been restless for the rest of the day, unable to forget that frightened doe look. Since then, he found himself looking for her in the corridors, inventing excuses to pass through the area where she worked. Lily, in turn, nurtured a secret, almost devotional love for that man, who seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. She saw beyond the coldness, beyond the arrogance. She saw a broken man, lost in his own success, and her gentle heart felt compassion for that loneliness. He tried to hide behind expensive suits and Swiss watches. Ethan approached the bed with faltering steps, the alcohol blurring his vision and dulling his reason. In the dim light of the room, Lily's delicate silhouette merged with Allison's in his confused mind. He sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress yielding under his weight, and extended his trembling hand to touch the sleeping face. Her skin was warmer, softer than he expected, and there was an innocence in her features that brutally contrasted with the harshness of his world. "Allison," he murmured, his voice hoarse from whiskey and contained emotion. "Why do you never look at me like this when you're awake?" Lily woke slowly, her brown eyes opening to find his face leaning over hers. Her heart raced, a mixture of terror and fascination running through her veins like liquid fire. She knew she should correct him, say she wasn't Allison, but the words died in her throat. For years she had dreamed of a moment like this, when he would finally see her, touch her, recognize her as more than just a shadow in his house. "I always look at you like this," she whispered, her voice barely audible in the silence of the room. "You just never see me." The confession left her lips before she could think of the consequences. Ethan tilted his head, confused by the response that didn't match Allison's cold pattern, but the alcohol had dulled his ability to question. He saw only a woman who finally seemed to look at him with something beyond calculated indifference. His hands explored her body over the thin nightgown, and Lily trembled under his touch. She was a virgin, had kept her purity as the last treasure that remained to her in a world that had always tried to take everything from her. But at that moment, under the caresses of a man who had fascinated her since the first glance, she surrendered completely. It didn't matter that he confused her with someone else. It didn't matter that he was drunk. It was her chance to feel, at least once, the love she had secretly cultivated. Ethan possessed her there on that simple bed, with an intensity that surprised them both. There was a desperate hunger in his movements, as if he were trying to fill the void that corroded his soul through her body. Lily bit her lips to keep from screaming, feeling the pain of the first time mix with a pleasure she had never imagined possible. Silent tears streamed down her cheeks, but they weren't just from pain. They were tears of gratitude, of love, of a bittersweet happiness she knew would last only that night. Blood stained the white sheets, evidence of the innocence she had offered as a gift to the man she loved. Ethan didn't notice, lost in his own desperate need to feel something, anything, beyond the constant ice that had settled in his chest. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to be vulnerable, allowed himself to seek comfort in another person's body. When it was over, they lay side by side, breathless. Ethan fell asleep almost immediately, alcohol and exhaustion finally overcoming his resistance. Lily remained awake, observing his face in the darkness. There was a peace in his features that she had never seen before, as if, for a few moments, he had found the rest he had been seeking for so long. She memorized every detail of that moment, the weight of his arm around her waist, the sound of his deep breathing, the smell of his woody perfume mixed with sweat. She knew that when he woke up, everything would change. She knew the magic of that night would dissipate like smoke in the morning air. But for a few precious hours, she had been loved by the man of her dreams, even if he didn't know it was her. Istash, first light of dawn began to filter through the curtains when Ethan opened his eyes. The headache hit him like a hammer, and nausea followed immediately. He blinked several times, trying to focus his blurry vision, and then saw Lily beside him. Her brown hair spread across the pillow, her tanned skin glowing in the soft morning light, her young face marked by dried tears. Realization hit him like a punch to the stomach. It wasn't Allison. It had never been Allison. It was Lily, the cleaning girl, the daughter of southern migrants who swept the corridors of his house, and he had... What had he done? "My God," he murmured, moving abruptly away from the bed. "What? How?" Lily woke with the sudden movement, her eyes immediately finding his. There was fear there, but also a resigned acceptance, as if she had always known this moment would come. She covered herself with the sheet, trying to preserve a bit of dignity, but didn't look away. "You were confused," she said softly. I should have corrected you, but... But what? His voice came out harsher than intended, laden with guilt and anger. Anger at himself, at the situation, at the alcohol that had destroyed his self-control. "Are you underage? Tell me you're not underage." "I'm 19, Lily replied, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "I'm an adult, and I wanted it." Her confession disturbed him even more. There was a sincerity in her eyes that brutally contrasted with the falsehood he knew from his world. She wasn't lying, wasn't trying to take advantage of the situation. She had really desired that moment, and that terrified him more than any blackmail or manipulation. Ethan rose, abruptly, running his hands through his disheveled hair as he tried to process what had happened. His world, built on absolute control and calculated decisions, had crumbled in one night of weakness. He looked at Lily, who remained lying down, covering herself with the blood-stained sheet, and something twisted in his chest. It wasn't just guilt. It was something deeper, more dangerous. "Get dressed," he ordered, his cold voice masking the turmoil of emotions that threatened to explode. "Get dressed and get out of here. Now." Lily nodded in silence, rising slowly. Every movement was a silent agony, not just from the physical pain of her first time, but from the pain of seeing the man she loved rejecting her as if she were a mistake to be corrected. She picked up her nightgown from the floor, dressed with the dignity she could muster, and walked towards the door. But before leaving, she stopped and looked at him one last time. "I don't regret it," she said softly, "and you don't need to regret it either. Sometimes the best moments of our lives happen when we're not trying to control them." Ethan stood still, watching her leave. Her words echoed in the empty room like a prophecy he wasn't ready to understand. He ran to the bathroom and violently vomited, trying to expel not just the alcohol, but also the guilt, the desire, and that strange feeling that he had lost something precious the moment he sent her away. Lily descended the marble stairs with silent steps, her legs still trembling. She knew that her life had changed forever that night, but she didn't yet know how much. When she reached the entrance hall, she heard the familiar sound of Allison's Mercedes engine. Her heart raced. She hid behind a column, watching Ethan's wife enter, carrying a small suitcase and several shopping bags. Allison Morgan Cole was everything Lily would never be. Tall, elegant, with perfectly brushed blonde hair and a bearing that screamed privilege from birth. At 38, she maintained her physical shape with expensive personal trainers and regular cosmetic treatments. She wore a dress that cost more than Lily earned in a year, and her high heels echoed through the hall like a warning that the Queen had returned to her castle. But Allison wasn't foolish. 15 years married to Ethan had taught her to read between the lines, to notice subtle changes in the environment. And there was something different that morning. She stopped in the middle of the hall, sniffing the air like a predator detecting the presence of prey. "Lily," she called, her voice sweet as poisoned honey. "Come here, dear." Lily had no choice but to leave her hiding place. She kept her head down, trying to hide any evidence of what had happened, but Allison had eyes trained to detect secrets. She approached slowly, studying every detail of the young woman's appearance, the slightly disheveled hair, the slightly swollen lips, the way she avoided eye contact. "You look different today," Allison observed, circling around Lily like a shark surrounding its prey. "Is there something you'd like to tell me?" "No, Mrs. Cole," Lily replied, her voice barely above a whisper. I just came to get my things. I don't think I'll be working here anymore." Alison smiled, but there was no warmth in her expression. "Oh, what a shame, and why this sudden decision? Did something happen during my absence?" Lily's silence was answer enough. Alison nodded slowly, as if confirming a suspicion she already carried. She knew her husband well enough to know he was capable of anything when drunk and lonely. And she knew men in general well enough to know that a beautiful, vulnerable girl in his house was a temptation few would resist. "Very well," Alison finally said. "You may go, but Lily—" She held the young woman's arm with enough force to leave marks. "If you're thinking of telling this little story to anyone, or if you imagine you can gain something from it, you're very mistaken. Men like my husband destroy girls like you without blinking, understood?" Lily nodded, tears burning her eyes. She gently pulled her arm away and walked towards the door, feeling Alison's penetrating gaze on her back. When she finally left the mansion, the fresh morning air hit her face like a slap, bringing her back to the cruel reality of her situation. Meanwhile, Ethan remained in his room, looking through the window at the perfectly manicured garden. He had taken an ice-cold shower, trying to wash away the memory of the previous night, but her perfume still seemed stuck to his skin. When Alison came up to greet him, he maintained a careful distance, fearing she could detect his betrayal just by looking at him. "How was Boston?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "Productive," Alison replied, studying his face. "And your night? I hope you enjoyed yourself alone." There was an irony in her voice that didn't go unnoticed by Ethan, but he chose to ignore it. "I worked late. You know how it is." "Yes, I do," said Alison, approaching the mirror to touch up her makeup. "By the way, dismiss the outsourced cleaning team. I'll hire a more reliable company. I don't like strangers circulating through our house." Ethan felt his stomach contract, but only nodded. He knew Alison had discovered something, but wasn't sure how much she knew. And part of him, a part that terrified him, felt a strange relief knowing Lily would be far away, because her presence had awakened something in him that he didn't know how to control. That afternoon, Lily cleaned her small room in the boarding house where she lived with her parents, storing the few clothes she owned in a borrowed suitcase. She had decided to leave the coast at least for a while. She couldn't face the possibility of encountering Ethan again, nor endure Alison's suspicious looks. Her heart was broken, but her dignity remained intact. Sarah, her mother, entered the room carrying a cup of coffee with milk. "My daughter, are you sure about this decision? Work is hard to find." "I'm sure, Mum," Lily replied, forcing a smile. "I need time to think, to decide what I want to do with my life." But what she didn't tell her mother was that morning, while hurriedly dressing in the guest room of the mansion, she had felt a subtle change in her body, a sensitivity in her breasts, a slight nausea she attributed to nervousness. Signs a woman learns to recognize, even having been a virgin until the night before. 2 weeks passed like an eternity for Ethan. His days dragged on in endless meetings, contracts he signed without reading, decisions he made on autopilot. His nights were even worse, filled with glasses of whiskey that couldn't erase the memory of the soft touch of Lily's skin, the small sound she made when he possessed her, the way she looked at him when he sent her away. He caught himself looking for her in the corridors of the company, forgetting for a moment that she no longer worked there. Several times he stopped his car in front of the boarding house where she lived, but never had the courage to get out. What right did he have to look for her? What words could he use to explain the inexplicable? Alison observed her husband's strange behavior with the patience of a spider, waiting for the fly to struggle until exhaustion. She knew the signs, the constant distraction, the way he stared into nothing during dinner, the way he avoided her casual touch. Ethan was obsessed, and this gave her an advantage she intended to use at the right moment. At the office, Victoria noticed the change in her boss. He, who was always meticulous and controlling, now left important documents on the desk, forgot appointments, and had outbursts of anger for insignificant reasons. That Tuesday, when she brought breakfast, she found him looking out the window with an expression she had never seen before. Pure vulnerability. "Mr. Cole," she said hesitantly, "you need to sign the contracts for the West Shore project." Ethan turned slowly as if coming out of a trance. "Victoria," he said, and there was something different in his voice. "Have you ever regretted something you did? Something that changed your life forever?" The question caught her by surprise. In 20 years working for him, Ethan had never asked a personal question. "We all have regrets, sir, but sometimes what we think is a mistake is just life showing. Thus a different path." He nodded thoughtfully and turned his attention to the documents, but Victoria saw that her words had touched something deep. Meanwhile, Lily had moved to a small apartment in Bayside across the bay. She had found work as a waitress in a seafood restaurant on Harborview Beach, where the constant smell of fried fish made her feel constant nausea. Initially, she attributed the discomfort to the stress of moving and the sadness she carried like a weight in her chest. But when she missed her first menstrual period, reality hit her like a tsunami. Sitting in the tiny bathroom of her apartment, looking at the positive pregnancy test, Lily felt her world collapse and rebuild itself at the same time. She carried within her a part of Ethan, the physical result of a night that had meant everything to her and apparently nothing to him. Her hands trembled when she touched her still, flat belly. Growing inside was a life she already desperately loved, but which also represented living evidence of her moment of weakness. How would she explain it to her parents? How would she support a child on her waitress salary? And more importantly, should she tell Ethan? For 3 consecutive nights, Lily stayed awake, weighing her options. She could simply disappear, raise the child away from the coast, invent a story about a boyfriend who abandoned her. Or she could seek out Ethan and tell the truth, running the risk of him not believing or worse, wanting to get rid of the problem definitively. In the end, it was Allison who made the decision for her. That Thursday, Lily was serving tables at the restaurant when she saw a black Mercedes park outside. Her heart raced when Allison stepped out of the car, elegant as always, but with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She entered the restaurant and sat at a corner table, ordering only a coffee she didn't even touch. "Hello, Lily," said Allison when she approached with the menu. "What a coincidence finding you here." "Mrs. Cole," Lily murmured, her hands trembling imperceptibly. "What? How did you find me?" "Dear, when you have enough money, finding people isn't difficult." Allison crossed her legs and leaned back in her chair. "Sit down, we need to talk." Lily looked around nervously. The restaurant was relatively empty, and her boss was in the kitchen. She sat in the opposite chair, keeping her hands on her lap. To hide the tremor, "You're pregnant," Allison said bluntly. "Don't look at me like that, dear. I recognize the signs. The paleness, the nausea, the way you unconsciously protect your belly." "How many weeks?" Lily swallowed hard. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you do." Allison leaned forward, her voice low but cutting like a blade. "The question is, what do you intend to do with this information? Because if you're thinking of showing up at my house with this story, you're very mistaken." "I don't want anything from you," Lily said, finding courage in her own pain. "Not from him, not from you. I can take care of my child alone." "Your child?" Allison laughed, a cold sound that didn't match the beauty of her face. "Dear, you can. Barely support yourself. How do you intend to raise a child? And more importantly, how do you intend to explain to this child who its father is?" Allison's words hit Lily like stabs, but she raised her chin defiantly. "That's not your problem. You can go back to your perfect life and pretend I never existed." "Ah, but you do exist, and now you carry something that can destroy everything I've built." Allison opened her purse and took out an envelope. "Here's enough money for you to solve this problem and start over somewhere else. Far from the coast, far from us." Lily looked at the envelope as if it were a venomous snake. "You're offering me money to abort?" "I'm offering a practical solution to a problem that benefits everyone. You're young, you can have other children when you're ready, with a man who really loves you." "And if I refuse?" Allison's smile became predatory. "Then you'll discover what kind of man you really got involved with. Ethan is capable of things you can't even imagine when he feels threatened. He can destroy your family, your parents' jobs, any chance you have of a dignified life. Do you really want to put your parents in that situation because of one night's mistake?" Lily felt tears burning her eyes, but she held them back. She looked at Allison, seeing for the first time the calculated coldness that hid behind the perfect facade. "You don't know him," she said softly. "You think you do, but you don't. There's goodness in him, there's pain. He's not the monster you're describing." "Maybe you're right," Allison conceded, putting the envelope back in her purse. "But are you willing to bet your parents' lives on it? Because that's what you're doing, dear. A very dangerous bet." Lily sat in the chair for long minutes after Allison left, looking at the untouched coffee cup that still steamed on the table. Allison's words echoed in her mind like a curse, planting seeds of doubt that she desperately tried to ignore. Did she really know the man she had fallen in love with? Was her perception of him nothing but an illusion created by her naive heart? That night, Lily called her mother for the first time in 2 weeks. Sarah immediately noticed that something was wrong from her daughter's choked voice. "My girl, what happened? Are you sick?" Lily held the phone tightly, fighting against the urge to pour out everything. "Mum, if I needed to disappear for a while, go far away, would you be okay?" "Lily, what kind of talk is that? You're scaring me." "Just answer, Mum, please." Sarah sighed on the other end of the line. "Daughter, we've always found a way to survive. But you're our family. You're our strength. Why are you talking like this?" After hanging up, Lily lay on the narrow bed of her apartment and placed her hands on her flat belly. "What do I do, little one?" she murmured. "How do I protect you and our family at the same time?" During the following days, she made a decision that would change the course of her story. If Ethan wanted to forget she existed, she would give him exactly that. She would disappear so completely that not even Allison could find her. She quit her job at the restaurant, inventing a story about a work opportunity in another state, and began to plan her escape. Meanwhile, Ethan was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. His obsession with Lily had grown to the point of interfering with his ability to work. He hired a private detective, officially to check backgrounds of former employees for security reasons, but in reality to discover where she was and how she was doing. The report arrived on a rainy Friday afternoon. Ethan locked himself in his office and read each line with a desperate hunger for information. Lily Oliveira Santos, 19 years old, from Savannah, Georgia. She worked as a waitress in Bayside, lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment, had no known relationships. The attached photo showed her leaving the restaurant, and Ethan was shocked by her appearance. She had lost weight. There were shadows under her eyes and a sadness in her expression that hit him like a punch to the stomach. But it was the last line of the report that made him stop breathing. Pregnancy suspected based on observed behavior and apparent physical changes. The paper trembled in his hands. Pregnancy. The word echoed in his mind like a funeral gong. If it were true, if Lily was really carrying his child, everything would change. His controlled world, his carefully orchestrated life, his identity. As a man who didn't allow himself to be affected by emotions, everything would crumble. Ethan cancelled all appointments that day and drove to Bayside like a possessed man. He parked in front of the restaurant and waited, watching the door like a predator stalking its prey. When Lily finally came out at the end of her shift, he almost didn't recognize her. She wore a loose dress that hid her body, but there was something in her posture, in the way she protected her abdomen with her hands, that confirmed his suspicions. He followed her at a safe distance to the building where she lived, noted the address, and spent the entire night in the car, looking at the lit windows on the 3rd floor. He was fighting an internal war between the desire to go up and confront her and the terror of discovering that his suspicions were real. The next morning, Lily woke up with a decision made. She had saved enough money for a bus ticket to Atlanta, where a cousin of her mother had offered temporary shelter. She began to pack, putting her few possessions in 2 travel bags. She was folding her clothes when she heard knocks on the door. Her heart raced. No one knew where she lived except the apartment owner and Allison. She approached the door with silent steps and looked through the peephole. On the other side was Ethan, wearing a dark suit that made him look even more imposing in the narrow corridor of the building. "Lily," he said, his voice muffled by the wooden door. "I know you're in there. I need to talk to you." She rested her forehead against the door, closing her eyes. 2 weeks dreaming of this moment, and now that it had arrived, she felt terrified. "Go away," she said. "We have nothing to talk about." "Yes, we do. You know we do." The silence stretched between them like an abyss. Finally, Lily opened the door, but kept the security chain on. Through the gap, she could see his face, the grey eyes that haunted her dreams, the tense jaw, the expression of a man fighting internal demons. "What do you want?" "Kaisi," she asked. "The truth," Ethan replied. "About you, about the baby." The word left his lips like a confession, laden with fear and hope in equal doses. Lily felt her legs weaken. How did he know? "I don't know what you're talking about." She lied, but her voice betrayed her uncertainty. "Please," he said, and there was a break in his voice she had never heard before. "Just let me in 5 minutes. Then if you want me to leave, I'll go and never come back." Lily hesitated. All her logic screamed for her to keep the door closed, to protect herself and the baby from the storm his presence would inevitably bring. But her heart, that foolish heart that had fallen in love at first sight, yearned for a few more moments in his presence. She removed the chain and opened the door. Ethan entered the small apartment as if he were entering sacred territory. His eyes scanned the modest environment, the simple furniture, the undecorated walls, the window that overlooked an inner courtyard. It was so different from the luxury of his mansion, but there was something about that space that touched him deeply. Perhaps it was the sense that for the first time in years, he was in a place where people truly lived, where emotions weren't masked by social formalities. "Is it true?" he asked, turning to face her. "Are you pregnant?" Lily raised her chin defiantly. "And if I am? What difference does it make to you?" "All the difference in the world," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "If it's my child." "It is yours," she said, cutting off his speculations. "But don't worry. I don't want anything from you. Not money, not recognition, not explanations. I'll raise my child alone, far from you and your wife." The coldness in her voice hit him like a slap. "Lily, You what? Regret it? Sorry, want to compensate me?" She laughed bitterly. "I told you that morning I didn't regret it. I still don't regret it. But I'm also not foolish enough to believe you'll leave your perfect life for a poor pregnant girl." Lily's words hit Ethan like precise stabs to his conscience. He observed her there, standing in the middle of the tiny apartment, defending with tooth and nail the dignity she had left, and felt something definitively break inside his chest. She was right. He had spent weeks looking for her not out of love or responsibility, but out of a selfish obsession that even he didn't completely understand. "You don't understand," he said, taking a step toward her. "Since that night I can't forget you, I can't work, I can't sleep, I can't live without thinking about you." "That's not love," Lily replied, crossing her arms over her chest. "That's guilt. Or maybe it's just wounded pride, because someone finally said no to the great Ethan Morgan Cole." The accusation made him recoil as if he'd been slapped. "That's not true." "Isn't it?" She approached him, her brown eyes shining with a mixture of pain and defiance. "Then tell me one thing. What do you know about me? What's my favorite color? What's my biggest dream? What am I afraid of? Do you know anything about who I am beyond the body you possessed that night?" Ethan remained silent, because the truth was that he didn't know. He had spent weeks obsessed with her, but had never asked himself about her dreams, her fears, her desires. He had reduced her to a physical memory, to a need that needed to be satisfied. "I want to learn," he finally said, his voice hoarse. "I want to know everything about you. You want," Lily laughed without humor, "and your wife, and your reputation, and your empire built on the destruction of families like mine. Are you willing to give up all of that for a girl you don't even know?" The question hanging in the air between them was more than Ethan was prepared to answer. He had built his entire identity on power and control, on the ability to keep everything and everyone in their proper places. The idea of giving that up, of becoming vulnerable, terrified him more than any financial loss. Lily saw the hesitation in his eyes and nodded sadly. That's what I thought. Go away, Ethan. Forget you found me. Forget there's a baby. Continue your life as if nothing happened. I can't, he said desperately. I can't forget you. I can't forget my child. Then what do you propose? That I be your secret mistress? That I live in some apartment you'll pay for, waiting for your occasional visits when you're not busy being the perfect husband? Lily walked to the window and looked down at the busy street below. I deserve more than that. My child deserves more than that. Ethan approached from behind, stopping a few inches away. He could feel the heat emanating from her body, the sweet smell of her cheap shampoo. Then tell me what you want. Money? A house? I want love, she said without turning. I want to be someone's priority, not a dirty secret hidden in the shadows. I want my child to have a father who is proud of them, not someone who visits in secret as if they were a shame. What if I left Allison? The question left his lips before he could stop it, surprising them both. Lily turned slowly, studying his face. Would you do that? She asked. Would you give up your perfect wife, your social position, half your fortune in a divorce? For me? Ethan looked into her eyes, and for the first time in his adult life, didn't have an immediate answer. The question exposed all his weaknesses, all his fears, all the falsehood on which he had built his existence. I need time, he finally said. Lily nodded as if she expected exactly that response. Time is the one thing we don't have. In a few hours, I'll be on a bus to Atlanta. I'll start a new life, far from you, far from all this. And when our child is born, they will have my last name, will know only my family will grow up thinking their father died before they were born. No, said Ethan, panic tinging his voice. Don't do that, please. Why? Give me a reason to stay that isn't your obsession or your feeling of guilt. Ethan stood still, fighting against words that refused to leave his throat. How to explain that she had awakened something in his soul that he thought was dead? How to admit that for the first time in 41 years he had found someone who saw him as more than just a source of power or money? Because you can't even say it, can you? Lily whispered, tears finally escaping her eyes. The word love is so difficult for you that you'd rather let me go than admit you feel something. She walked to the table where her half-packed bags were and began folding clothes again. My cousin lives in Marietta. She'll help me with the baby until I can get organized. It's a good life, simple but honest. My child will grow up knowing what it's like to be loved unconditionally. Ethan watched her pack, each of her movements a stab in his chest. He wanted to scream, wanted to stop her, wanted to tear her away from there and keep her prisoner in his mansion until she understood that he needed her. But a deeper part of his conscience, a part that perhaps was still capable of goodness, knew that she deserved more than he could offer at that moment. If I come after you, he said, his voice barely audible, will you receive me? Lily stopped folding clothes and looked at him. It depends on who you are when you get there. The man who possessed me as if I were an object, or the man I saw cry from loneliness that night? And if I don't know which of the two I am? Then, you'll have to find out, she replied, alone, because I won't wait for you to decide if I'm worthy of your love while my child grows up without a father. Ethan nodded slowly, understanding that he had lost the right to ask for more time, more chances, more understanding. He headed for the door, but stopped with his hand on the doorknob. Lily, he said without turning, that night, it meant something to me too, I just don't know what yet. I know what it was, she replied softly. It was the first time you allowed yourself to feel something real, and it was the last time I allowed myself to love someone who can't love me back. When the door closed behind him, Lily allowed herself to cry for the first time since discovering the pregnancy, not just for the loss of the man she loved, but for the end of an illusion she had cultivated for weeks. Ethan Morgan Cole was exactly what she thought he was, a powerful and complex man, capable of great passion but incapable of great love. 6 months passed since Lily left the coast, 6 months that felt like an eternity to Ethan, who discovered that it's possible to live on autopilot while your soul slowly withers. He continued closing contracts, continued destroying lives with his business decisions, continued being the Cold and calculating man he had always been, but something fundamental had changed. For the first time in his life, he was aware of the emptiness he carried within himself. Alison noticed the change, of course. It was impossible not to notice how her husband had become even more distant, even more mechanical in his interactions. He went to social events because he needed to, smiled for the cameras because it was necessary, but there was an absence in his eyes that she recognized because she saw the same absence in the mirror every morning. "You're going to look for her," Alison said one night, during a silent dinner at their marble dining table that could accommodate 12 people, but almost always hosted only 2 strangers who shared the same last name. Ethan raised his eyes from his untouched plate. "What are you talking about?" "The girl," Alison replied, delicately cutting a piece of salmon. "You're going to look for her sooner or later. It's written on your face for months." "I don't know what—" "Please," Alison interrupted him with a cold smile. "We are many things, dear, but we're not liars to each other. At least not about this. You're obsessed with her, and that obsession is destroying what little was left of you." Ethan put down his fork, the sound of metal against the plate echoing in the silence of the hall. "And if I am?" "Then go," Alison said simply. "Go after your little southern Juliet and find out if what you feel is love or just the novelty of being rejected for the first time in your life." The conversation ended there, but Alison's words planted a seed that grew quickly. 2 weeks later, Ethan was on a plane to Atlanta, carrying only a small suitcase and a determination he didn't know if it was brave or desperate. Lily had settled in a small but cozy house in Marietta, in the historic district where the smell of peach cobbler and the sound of folk music mixed with the vibrant colors of colonial houses. Her cousin Jenny, a cheerful 30-year-old woman who worked as a nurse, had become more than a host. She was a sister, a confidant, a constant force in her new life. Pregnancy had transformed Lily in ways she hadn't expected. Her belly was now prominent, rounded, impossible to hide under loose dresses. But along with the physical changes came an inner strength she didn't know she possessed. Away from Ethan's shadow, away from the pressure of the coast, she had discovered who she really was, a strong, resilient woman, capable of unconditional love. She worked in a small craft shop in the historic center, selling pieces made by local artisans to tourists. The money was little, but enough for her simple needs. At night she sewed clothes for the baby, while Jenny read stories aloud or played guitar. It was a simple life, but it was a true life, filled with genuine love and real expectations. The baby moved constantly now, little punches and kicks that made Lily smile even in the most difficult moments. She talked to him every night, telling about her day, singing lullabies her mother used to sing to her. She never mentioned the father, but sometimes, in the quietest moments of dawn, she caught herself imagining what it would be like if Ethan were there, if he would be able to love that child as much as she already loved it. It was on a Thursday afternoon, when she was arranging seed necklaces in the shop window, that she saw his reflection in the glass. Ethan was standing across the street, wearing a white dress shirt and dark pants, as out of place in the colorful scenery of Marietta as a black swan in a lake of pink flamingos. Lily's heart raced, a mixture of joy and terror running through, her body like electricity. She turned slowly, her hands instinctively moving to protect her belly, and met his eyes across the busy street. Even at a distance she could see the expression on his face, a mixture of relief at having found her and shock at seeing her so visibly pregnant. Ethan crossed the street with determined steps, but stopped a few meters from the shop door, as if an invisible barrier prevented him from getting any closer. Lily left the shop and stood on the sidewalk, her hands still protectively over her belly. "You came," she said, her voice laden with contradictory emotions. "I said I would," he replied, his eyes fixed on the curve of her belly. How are you?" "I'm fine," Lily replied. "We're fine." The word "where" hit him like a punch. Ethan looked at her belly and felt a wave of emotions he didn't know how to process. In there was his child, growing, developing, preparing to be born, a life he had helped create but hadn't participated in any moment of the gestation. "May I?" He hesitantly extended his hand toward her belly. Lily hesitated for a moment, then nodded. When his hand touched her belly through the cotton dress, the baby kicked vigorously, as if recognizing the father's touch. Ethan quickly withdrew his hand, his eyes widening. "He kicked," he said, amazed. "She," Lily corrected with a small smile. "It's a girl." "A girl," Ethan repeated, as if testing the word. "How do you know?" "Ultrasound. Jenny took me to the public hospital. Everything's fine with her, growing perfectly." Lily paused, studying his face. "Why did you come, Ethan?" "What? Changed?" "I did," he answered simply. "I changed, or at least I'm trying to change. These last months were the worst of my life, not because I lost you, but because I realized how much of my life was a lie, how much I was living on autopilot, without feeling anything real." Lily observed him carefully, noticing the small differences that 6 months had brought. There were new lines around his eyes, a paleness in his skin that spoke of sleepless nights, a vulnerability in his posture she had never seen before. "And Allison?" she asked. "She's taking care of the divorce papers," Ethan replied. "It was her decision, actually. She said she was tired of being married to a ghost." The revelation surprised Lily. "You got divorced?" "I'm getting divorced," he corrected. "It's a complicated process. It will still take a few months, but yes, Lily, I chose. I chose you. I chose our daughter. I chose to try to discover who I can be when I'm not hiding behind walls of ice." Lily felt tears burning her eyes, but she held them back. "And what do you expect from me? That I fall into your arms because you finally decided that maybe I deserve a piece of your attention?" "I expect nothing," Ethan said, his voice firm but gentle. "I came here with no expectations, no demands. I came to tell you that I'm trying to become the man you deserve, the father our daughter deserves. And if you give me a chance, if you allow me to stay around, I'll spend the rest of my life proving that I've changed." Lily looked into Ethan's eyes for a long moment, searching for signs of the sincerity his words suggested. She had dreamed of this moment for months, but now that he was there, real and vulnerable before her, she felt a mixture of hope and caution that left her divided. "You can't just show up here and expect everything to go back to how it was," she finally said. "We're not the same people we were 6 months ago. I'm no longer that naive girl who fell in love with you at first sight." "I know," Ethan replied, "and I don't want the naive girl. I want to know the strong woman you've become. I want to learn who you are when you're not living in the shadow of my world." Lily felt the baby move again, as if reacting to her mother's emotional tension. She took a deep breath, trying to organize her thoughts. "If you really want a chance, you'll have to earn it. I won't give my heart again just because you decided it's now convenient to love me." "What do you want me to do?" asked Ethan. "First, I want you to know my real life, not the romanticized version you created in your head, but my actual life, my family, my work, my routine. If you can accept that, if you can see me as I really am, maybe we can talk about the future." Ethan nodded. "Where are you living?" "With my cousin Jenny. It's a small, simple house. Very different from your mansion." Lily hesitated for a moment. "Jenny doesn't know who you are. For her, you're just a man who hurt me and abandoned me pregnant. If you want to meet her, you'll have to be prepared to be judged." "I deserve to be judged," Ethan said. "For what I did to you, for what I failed to do for our daughter. I'm prepared to face the consequences." Lily studied him once more, then nodded slowly. "All right, you can come for dinner tonight, but Ethan—" She lightly touched his arm. "If you hurt Jenny, if you disrespect my family or my new life in any way, I'll ask you to leave and never come back." "Understood?" "Understood," he replied, covering her hand with his. "Lily, thank you for giving me this chance." That night, Ethan found himself sitting at a simple wooden table in a small but cozy kitchen, being served by a woman who looked at him with barely disguised distrust. Jenny had prepared a traditional southern dinner, and the rich, full-bodied smell filled the entire house. "So you're the famous Ethan," said Jenny, placing a steaming plate in front of him. "Lily told me about you. I imagine they weren't very Good things, Ethan replied, attempting a smile. No, they weren't, Jenny confirmed bluntly. Lily cried for weeks because of you, and she's not one to cry over a man. Jenny, Lily intervened softly, but her cousin ignored her. No, let me speak, Jenny continued, sitting at the table with her arms crossed. You think you can show up here after 6 months and everything will be fine. That just saying some pretty words will make Lily forget how you treated her. Ethan put his fork on the plate and looked directly at Jenny. No, I don't think that. I know I did unforgivable things. I know I hurt Lily in ways I may never fully repair. But I also know that I love her, that I love our daughter, and that I want to spend the rest of my life trying to deserve her forgiveness. Love. Jenny laughed with disdain. Rich man like you must have a very different definition of love than us normal people. Maybe I did, Ethan admitted. But Lily taught me what true love is. She taught me that loving is caring more about the other person's happiness than your own. It's being willing to change, to grow, to be better. And she taught me that just by being who she is. Lily felt tears burning her eyes. There was a sincerity in Ethan's voice that she had never heard before, a vulnerability that completely contrasted with the arrogant man she had known. Words are easy, said Jenny, but her voice had lost some of its harshness. What have you done to prove you've changed? I left my wife, Ethan replied. I cancelled several contracts that would harm families, like Lily's. I started investing in affordable housing projects instead of just gentrification, and I came here knowing I could be rejected because I was willing to risk everything for a chance to be near the woman I love. The silence that followed was heavy with meaning. Jenny looked at Lily, who had her hands on her belly, her eyes closed as if fighting an internal battle. Lily, Jenny said softly, what do you want to do? Lily opened her eyes and looked at Ethan. I want you to stay in Marietta for a few weeks. Not in an expensive hotel, but in a simple inn. I want you to know my routine, my work, my friends. I want to see how you behave when you're not in your element, when you can't use money or power to solve problems. And then, asked Ethan, then we'll see if the man you say you've become is real or just a beautiful illusion that will disappear at the first serious conflict. Ethan spent the following 2 weeks living in a family inn in the center of Marietta, walking to the shop where Lily worked every morning, lunching at popular restaurants, talking with Jenny's neighbors. It was a completely new experience for him, living without the protection of his social position, being just another man in a community where everyone knew each other and took care of each other mutually. He learned to play with the neighborhood children, who initially viewed him with curiosity, but soon accepted him when they realized he really paid attention to what they said. He learned to appreciate the music that came from houses at night, the smell of home cooking, the simplicity of conversations that didn't revolve around money or business. But mainly, he learned to truly know Lily. He discovered that her favorite color was green because it reminded her of the vegetation of Georgia. He learned that her biggest dream was to open a craft school to teach underprivileged youth. He discovered that she was afraid of storms because they reminded her of the hurricane that had devastated her region when she was a child. One afternoon, as they walked along Harborview Beach, Lily finally asked the question that had been stuck in her throat for days. What happens when the baby is born, she asked. Will you want to take her to the coast? Will you want her to grow up in your world? Ethan stopped walking and turned to her. I want her to grow up where you feel happy. If it's here in Marietta, then it's here that we'll raise our family. If it's on the coast, we'll return together. What matters isn't the place, Lily. It's being together. And your work. Your empire? Can work from anywhere, he replied. And I'm restructuring my business anyway. Maybe it's time to build something new, something that isn't based on the destruction of other people's dreams. Lily felt a mild contraction and placed her hand on her belly. The baby was restless, constantly moving. I think she's impatient to be born, she said with a smile. As if she were my daughter, Ethan joked, and for the first time in weeks, Lily laughed genuinely. The sound of her laughter was like music to him, a confirmation that perhaps he was on the right track. The dawn came like an explosion of pain that wrenched Lily from the deepest sleep. It was 3 o'clock in the morning when the first real contractions began. intense waves that ran through her body like tidal waves. She tried to control her breathing, remembering the birthing classes she had attended with Jenny, but the intensity of the pain caught her by surprise. "Jenny!" How she shouted, her voice cutting through the silence of dawn. "Jenny, it's time!" Her cousin woke immediately, her experience as a nurse making her jump out of bed with military efficiency. "Calm down, Lily. Let's time the contractions first." But when she saw the expression of pain on her cousin's face, she knew there was no time for timing. "I need to call Ethan," Lily said between one contraction and another. "Are you sure?" Jenny asked while collecting the maternity bag that had been prepared weeks ago. "You don't need to go through this with him here if you don't want to." "I want him here," Lily replied firmly. "She's his daughter too. He has the right to know." Her from the first moment. Jenny called Ethan, who answered on the first ring, as if he had been waiting for the call. "It's now," she said simply. "County Hospital. Come quickly." Ethan arrived at the hospital 15 minutes later, still wearing the t-shirt he had slept in, his hair disheveled, his face pale with worry. He found Jenny in the corridor, pacing back and forth. "How is she?" he asked, breathless. "In advanced labor," Jenny replied. "The doctor said the baby is in a hurry. Lily is asking for you." Ethan had never set foot in a public hospital before. The smell of disinfectant, the constant noise, the frantic movement were completely foreign to him. When he entered the room where Lily was, he found her lying on the bed, sweaty, clutching the sheets during a contraction. "You came," she said when she saw his face, relief mixed with pain in her voice. "Of course I came," he replied, approaching the bed. "How can I help?" "Just stay here," Lily said, extending her hand to him. "Don't leave me alone." Ethan held her hand, feeling the strength with which she squeezed his fingers during each contraction. There was something primitive and powerful about that moment, seeing the woman he loved fighting to bring their daughter into the world. For the first time in his life, he felt completely unnecessary and completely essential at the same time. The following hours dragged on like an eternity. Lily was exhausted, but continued fighting with a determination that impressed even the doctors. Ethan didn't leave her side for a moment, whispering words of encouragement, wiping her sweat, being her anchor amidst the storm of pain. "I can't anymore," Lily cried during a particularly intense contraction. "It's too much." "You can," Ethan said firmly, looking directly into her eyes. "You're the strongest person I know. Our daughter needs you to be strong now." "It's almost time," announced the doctor. "On the next contraction, Lily, you're going to push." What followed was a mixture of pain, determination, and miracle. Lily pushed with all the strength she had left. Ethan held her hand as if it were a lifeline. And then, in a moment that changed everything, they heard their daughter's first cry. "It's a beautiful girl," said the doctor, lifting the baby for them to see. "Tiny, but with a healthy pair of lungs." Lily began to cry, tears of relief and joy streaming down her face. Ethan looked at the tiny child, moving her little arms in the air, and felt something completely break inside his chest. It wasn't pain. It was the opening of something that had been closed for 41 years. When they placed the baby in Lily's arms, Ethan leaned in to better see his daughter. She had dark hair like her mother, but the shape of her eyes was unmistakably his. She was perfect, tiny and perfect. "Hi, little one," Lily whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I'm your mummy." "What shall we call her?" asked Ethan, gently touching the baby's little hand. "Hope," Lily replied without hesitation. "Because she represents everything I hope for from the future." Ethan nodded, finding the name perfect. "Hope Morgan Santos," he said. "She'll carry the name of both families." In the days that followed, Ethan discovered that being a father was simultaneously terrifying and wonderful. Hope was a relatively calm baby, but her nights were irregular, and he found himself waking up several times to help with feedings and diaper changes. There was a strange but comforting intimacy in caring for something so small and vulnerable. Lily watched him interact with their daughter with a mixture of admiration and caution. Ethan was gentle with Hope, patient in a way she had never seen him be with anyone. But there were still moments when she caught him looking at the baby with an expression of panic, as if he couldn't believe he was responsible for something so precious. One afternoon, while Hope slept in his arms, Ethan looked at Lily and said, "I don't know how to do this, how to be a father, how to be the man you deserve. I'm afraid of ruining everything." "All parents are afraid," Lily replied softly. "What matters isn't not being afraid, it's continuing to try even with fear. What if I'm like my father was with me? Cold, distant, incapable of showing love?" Lily approached him, placing her hand over his on the armchair. "You're not your father. The fact that you're worried about this already proves you're different. Did your father care about being a good father?" "No," Ethan replied after a moment. "He cared about making me a version of him." "And is that what you want for Hope?" "God, no," he said immediately. "I want her to be free to choose who she wants to be. I want her to know she's loved unconditionally." "Then you already know how to be the father she needs," Lily said. "The rest we learn along the way." That night, Ethan spent hours awake watching Hope sleep in her crib. She was so small, so dependent, so full of possibilities. For the first time in his life, he understood what unconditional love meant. No matter what happened, no matter what choices she made in the future, he would always love her. And that realization changed something fundamental in his understanding of himself. When Lily woke in the middle of the night to breastfeed, she found Ethan still awake, sitting beside the crib. "You should sleep," she said softly. "I can't," he replied. "I'm afraid that if I sleep, all this will disappear, that I'll wake up and discover this was all a dream." Lily approached him, still carrying Hope. "It's not a dream. We're a real family, but Ethan—" She hesitated, then continued. "Being a family means more than just sharing the same space. It means commitment. It means choosing each other every day, even when it's difficult." "I choose you," he said without hesitation. "Every day for the rest of my life, I choose you." Lily studied his face in the dim light of the room, looking for signs of doubt or hesitation. But all she saw was pure sincerity, a love that had finally found its true object. "Then maybe it's time we start building our future together for real," she said. 2 years passed since Hope's birth, 2 years that completely transformed Ethan and Lily's lives. The house he had bought in Marietta, a restored colonial building with a view of the town square, had become a true home, full of child's laughter, folk music, and the constant smell of home cooking prepared by Sarah, who had moved from Savannah to help care for her granddaughter. Ethan had kept his word to restructure his business. His company now specialized in affordable housing and sustainable urban revitalization, projects that created opportunities instead of destroying them. The profit was less, but the satisfaction was infinitely greater. For the first time in his life, he slept with a clear conscience. Lily had flourished in her role as mother and wife. They had married in a simple ceremony at the Marietta Chapel, with only the families present, but the love that sealed that union was stronger than any luxury money could buy. She had opened her craft school, a small community center, where she taught young people and adults to work with ceramics, embroidery, and basketry. It was her small empire, built on generosity instead of greed. Hope had grown into a curious and determined little girl, with her father's grey eyes and her mother's warm smile. She spoke English mixed with some Spanish words that Ethan had taught her, and already showed signs of having inherited both her father's sharp intelligence and her mother's artistic sensitivity. That Sunday morning, the whole family was gathered on the porch of the house, having breakfast while watching the movement of people going to church. Ethan held Hope in his lap, trying to teach her the names of the birds that flew overhead, while Lily and Sarah planned the Sunday lunch. "Daddy, why do birds live in the sky?" asked Hope, with the typical curiosity of a 2-year-old. "Because that's where they feel safe," Ethan replied, kissing the top of her head. "Each living being has its special place where it can be happy." "And what's our special place?" she asked. Ethan looked around, seeing Lily smiling while peeling fruit, Sarah humming an old song while preparing biscuits, the sun shining on the green trees of the town square. "Here," he said simply. "Our special place is where we're together." Lily raised her eyes and met his gaze. Even after 2 years, there were still moments when she was surprised by the depth of the transformation that love had worked in that man. The cold and calculating Ethan of the past seemed to have been just a nightmare, replaced by this caring father and dedicated husband who played with his daughter in the park and helped her wash dishes after dinner. "Love," said Lily. "A letter arrived for you today, from the coast." Ethan frowned, taking the envelope she held out to him. The sender was Allison, now officially his ex-wife for more than a year. They had maintained minimal contact during the divorce process, and he didn't expect any more communication from her. Inside the envelope was a photo of Allison in her new house in Boston, beside a man Ethan recognized as one of the partners in his former company. She seemed genuinely happy, something he had never seen during the 15 years of marriage. On the back of the photo, Allison had written, "Thank you for liberating us both. I found my true love too. I wish happiness for your family." Ethan showed the photo to Lily, who smiled when she saw it. "She seems happy," Lily observed. "She does," Ethan agreed. "It's strange to think that we spent so many years together being unhappy when we could have found our true places much earlier." "Maybe we weren't ready before," Lily said wisely. "Maybe we needed to go through all that to get here." That afternoon, while Hope was taking her nap and Sarah was visiting the neighbors, Ethan and Lily walked hand in hand around the town square, their bare feet sinking into the warm grass. It was a ritual of theirs, these stolen moments of intimacy amidst the family routine. "Do you regret it?" Lily suddenly asked. "Leaving your old life behind?" Ethan stopped walking and turned to her. "Are you serious? Lily, that wasn't life. It was existence. It was a bunch of empty days filled with things that didn't matter. You and Hope gave me real life." "Even when she screams all night because she's teething?" Lily joked. "Especially when she screams all night," Ethan laughed, "because it means she's growing, she's healthy, she's here with us." Lily stopped and placed her hands on his chest. "Ethan, there's something I need to tell you." The serious tone in her voice made him alert. "What is it?" "I'm pregnant again," she said, carefully observing his reaction. For a moment, Ethan was completely still, processing the information. Then an immense smile spread across his face. "Really? Another baby?" "Really," Lily confirmed. "I'm almost 3 months along. I wanted to be sure before telling you." Ethan lifted her in his arms and spun her, making her laugh. "Another baby? Hope will have a little brother or sister." "Are you happy?" asked Lily when he put her down. "Happy is an understatement," said Ethan, kissing her deeply. I'm complete. For the first time in my life, I'm completely complete." They returned home. Lily thought about the extraordinary journey that had brought them here. From one night of mistake and passion to a solid and loving family, they had traveled a path that few couples managed to tread. It had been difficult, painful at times, but each obstacle overcome had strengthened the love between them. Ethan, in turn, reflected on the man he used to be. That cold and calculating Ethan seemed like a stranger now, someone he had known but never really been. The love of Lily and Hope had broken the walls he had built around his heart, allowing his true nature to finally emerge. That night, after putting Hope to bed, they sat on the porch watching the stars. Lily was nestled in Ethan's arms, her hand resting on her still flat belly where their second child was growing. "Where do we go from here?" asked Lily. "Wherever life takes us," Ethan replied. "As long as it's together, I can face anything." "Even double dirty diapers?" She teased. "Especially double dirty diapers," he laughed, kissing her hair. "Lily, you saved my soul. Before you, I was just a rich and empty man. Now I'm rich in everything that really matters." As the night breeze swayed the curtains and the sound of crickets lulled the house, Ethan and Lily planned their future. There would be challenges, they knew. Raising 2 children, maintaining a strong marriage, balancing work and family. None of it would be easy. But they had learned that true love isn't about ease. It's about choosing each other repeatedly, even when it's difficult. Years later, when they would tell their story to their children, they would say that true love sometimes begins unexpectedly, grows on difficult ground, but when it's real, when it's strong enough to survive the storms, it becomes the foundation upon which an entire life can be built. And so, on the porch of a colonial house in Marietta, with the sound of the town in the background and the stars as witnesses, Ethan and Lily wrote the happy ending to a story that began with pain, but was transformed by the redemptive power of true love. A love that not only saved them, but created a family, a new way of living.